Camera's rolling, mics are on. This is kind of the beginning.
No, okay.
I have to introduce the podcast, and then you can give an introduction of, your own introduction. Are you prepared to talk about yourself a little bit?
Vaguely, like probably in the most self-deprecating of terms, like usual. So,
Okay,
yeah.
Good. But you're comfortable being self-deprecating?
No.
I'm terrible at being self-deprecating.
Yeah,
I'm the worst at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, let me introduce the podcast real quick. Hey, everybody, I'm Jim Schneider, and this is my video podcast, Work in Progress, where I talk to my friends, my guests, about the work they do and why they do it. And this gentleman, right next to me here, is my guest for today. And I should give him an introduction, but my note card is completely blank, as you can see. So I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. I'm sorry to talk about you like you're not right there.
As a non-entity.
Yeah. But this is my friend Hubert. I'm going to let Hubert introduce himself. Go ahead, Hubert.
Hey, I'm Hubert Vigilla. I'm a writer who lives in Brooklyn, which makes me completely indistinguishable from 4/5 of people living in Brooklyn. Let's see, my fiction has appeared in The Normal School, No Tokens, additional writing about to show up in a food book from a place called Frida out in Philadelphia. There was a long time where I used to be a completely poorly paid online film critic, and sometimes I play music as well. I think that's the full scope of whatever creative things I do these days.
Okay. Tell me about this food thing.
Yeah, so my friend Lauren, who used to live in New Jersey but then moved to Philly, she partnered with this community group called Frida, which has this really cool space in downtown Philly. They do readings, art programs, and everything. And I got invited to do a reading of a short story I was working on, which was a lot of fun.
Was it food related?
It wasn't. This was about. It's kind of like Dirtbag Multiplicity, about a guy who starts to self-replicate. So while he's also afraid of going into a management position at work. So it winds up being like this story about having to self-manage different copies of himself.
Okay.
So I read the first part of that work in progress. And Thomas with Frida reached out to a lot of people who'd done readings or performances there and said, like, hey, we're doing this combination like food book, recipe book. If you're interested, feel free to contribute. So I wound up contributing like a very short piece about making pizza dough during the pandemic. So
Okay, yeah, and I was going to mention this because I saw, on your social media that you were making a lot of pizza. I think even pre-pandemic, you've made pizza for a while, right?
Yeah, very poorly, as it's interesting, just kind of like taking pizza dough a little bit more seriously. But I remember like years ago, after Thanksgiving, I'd make like just bad pizza dough, and it would just be like a way to shovel leftovers into people's face, basically.
Right.
So like you'd have like a cranberry dark meat and like, I don't know, mozzarella pizza, which is like, it's basically a sandwich, but it turned out pretty okay. But like
the Thanksgiving sandwich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of legend, the Thanksgiving sandwich. So, but yeah, during the pandemic, when like yeast finally became available again, that was just one of those things in a moment of, I guess, anxiety or like looking for comfort foods. It's like, what happens if I just eat a pizza a day? So I just make like a batch of pizza dough, divide it into like 5 parts, let them rise in the fridge, and sometimes just every day while trying to figure out what was going on with the world, I'll just have my pizza, I'll go walk around, I'll read a book, and slowly but surely I got better at making pizzas that way. So,
well, let me wind things back a little bit because I want to explain to the viewers. I think there will be more than one.
Oh, good.
I want to explain how we know each other, and then we can talk, because I'm curious just to know what you've been up to in the years that I haven't seen you, because it's been a while.
Yeah.
But Hubert and I met at the New School, the graduate creative writing program. He was in the fiction department, and that was back in 2009. Can you believe that? A long time ago. 50 years ago, if my math is correct there. And then, so it was a 2-year program, so we finished in 2011. And then I saw you from time to time until 2018. 2017, 2018, I think, is the last time we hung out. I was living here in New York for a short time in 2017, and then I went to Shanghai in 2018. So catch me up on your life since 2018. Tell me everything that's happened.
Oh, gosh.
Or you could explain, maybe from more of like a work perspective, what you've been doing. Let's go back even further. Since graduate school, we finished graduate school, and then what did you do work-wise?
Like creative work, or just like anything?
Oh, you can talk about both. Whatever you want.
I guess like thinking about like work in that 15-year period, looking back at it now, I think it's like almost like a 15-year process of like chipping away at a giant writer's block.
Yeah.
Because like it's so much easier to write in a school setting, obviously.
Yeah.
And when you're surrounded by peers and you're like going out and talking about writing and being involved with it for so long.
In that community.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it feels like there's so much going on, and then you're kind of like trying to figure it out afterwards, right? Like I think years ago George Saunders had mentioned that like a writing program is kind of like you're lost in the woods, and then there's like this iced over lake, and you get to glide to the other side of the woods just for a little bit before you wind up being lost and stumbling through the woods again. So
and you don't have an audience anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, there were a lot of like readings, like which was pretty interesting, like getting out there and trying to get my work, I guess, listened to. There were a few short stories published. I remember for a while I kind of waylaid out of fiction specifically and did film criticism for a while, like always been like this secondary passion. And after several years of both, I like admittedly I think I got pretty burned out with writing around the later 2010s. Though things are kind of picking back up.
How do you approach your creative work? When do you do it, and when do you find time for it, first of all?
Sometimes it's just wherever you can make that time. Like there are, it's one of those things about trying to rebuild that discipline that I lost during that intervening period of writer's block, being like, okay, what do I do now? Like, when do I do this? And sometimes I've found keeping kind of a loose schedule has helped me like get back into writing a little bit more. And then sometimes in the evening, that's like a really, really good time, because I don't know, it's almost like the reverse of being a kid who wants to just run down and open Christmas presents or something. Instead, it's just sort of like, man, can't wait for work to be over, because like this thing's been in my head for a while. So
yeah.
But
like a specific idea. Do you get a specific idea in your head, or just the desire, or you feel it? Like you have to sit down and write.
It's sometimes a bit of both. I think it's often more the desire, because like I know almost every time I write, it's almost like trying to figure out, why am I so excited about this again? Like trying to figure out like what obsessed me enough to want to write this weird thing, and then like doing that problem solving. But I think because it's such active problem solving and fully narcissistic, I feel remarkably interested in doing that after like, I don't know, writing for someone, like someone in another state who I've never met in person, whose only feedback for me is, I think you need to write at a higher level. Like there's something
like on a ladder, or
exactly.
Where have you been writing on the floor?
Please use your standing desk as it was intended, sir. Thank you for the feedback.
Have you ever tried that, by the way, a standing desk?
I like those. I do have a standing desk. Do you use one, or?
No, I don't have one at home. I have worked from a standing desk, and I think I like it. But I couldn't picture myself writing on one.
It's an interesting feeling for sure.
You do it?
Yeah, I do. It's weird. Like, I guess it varies, since my writing, like creative writing side of things is so like sporadic. Do it where you can, wherever you can. I think at least for like day job stuff, I like the standing desk, because if I'm standing somewhere, I don't feel as miserable as sitting somewhere.
Yeah, right.
But I have written. I mean, the piece I wrote for Frida was at that standing desk. Like,
oh, cool.
in an evening after work where it was just like, why am I writing about pizza? Oh yeah, no, this is why I'm writing about pizza. Like it wound up being like this little mini craft essay about like understanding like, making pizza dough is just kind of like, let's approach this like play, let's feel our way through something. And I think I wound up quoting, there's like a line in Ursula Le Guin's Lathe of Heaven where it's like, love isn't a stone, it must be made every day like bread and made fresh again. Like just always coming back to that work and knowing like, all right, I can just start over tomorrow and come back to this thing I'm working on. So.
Okay, so you're a West Coast guy who ended up on the East Coast. Let's talk about how you ended up here in New York. What brought you out here? So you finished school and then what?
I was working like a desk job somewhere. How old was I, gosh, when I decided to move? I was probably like 26 years old, lived in California all my life. All I knew was like the Bay Area and San Diego. And like, I think I'd always kind of joke to friends, like, I'm young and stupid enough. Why not like move out east? It worked out pretty well because I like my Aunt Irene, and by aunt I mean like fourth cousin of my dad. So like just like the colloquial aunt, I guess, as opposed to like an actual like close relative. She lived out in Flushing, and my dad just like, I think about that, like my dad, I remember he keeps telling this story about like when he moved from the Philippines to the United States, about how like a professor or mentor of his like told him, yeah, you should just go, you should leave, get the heck out of here, like try something new. And I think my dad kind of saw that in me, where it's like, yeah, I kind of hate like what I'm doing right now. And he's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, let's help you on your way then. So like lived in Flushing for about 6 or 7 months, and oddly enough, like one of my brother's friends from high school who was living in New York and at the time had like a small theater company, like a really small theater company. He was living in Williamsburg with 2 other people he went to school with at NYU with, and yeah, he just invited me out to a party and was just sort of like, hey, I'm moving out of this place. Do you want to sublease my room? Here are your 2 roommates you'd be moving in with. How about it? And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's like moving from like Flushing to Williamsburg, obviously a very big shift.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let me back up a little bit to I'm curious about when your dad came from the Philippines to the U.S. How old was he?
Gosh, let me try and do the math here. He had to be like in his early 30s.
Okay.
Maybe actually probably late 20s. Maybe a little older than I was when I moved to New York, because he and my mom were together, and he had a job in I want to say the Department of Education in the Philippines, like, but my mom and my dad were teachers, and my uncle Tino, actual uncle, not the colloquial uncle, like he moved to Hawaii and kind of became the person who helped my mom and dad get there. So.
And then do they work as teachers in the U.S.?
They did for a while, but like some of their credentials didn't quite transfer over, unfortunately, and it became like a challenge for them because they were like my dad was, I think my mom as well, were both doing special education, so it became extremely difficult and taxing. Just like, you know, the mental preparedness and like being there constantly for kids and attentive to their needs, like. I think it kind of wore them down, like a lot of teachers, just getting burned out by, you know, you care so much about these kids, but, you know, having enough space for yourself at the end of the day and your needs. So,
where did they live in the Philippines?
They grew up in Bana, like the northern provinces of the Philippines. Eventually got down to the Metro Manila area where they were working.
Okay.
And then I think from there moved to Oahu in Hawaii, where my uncle Tino had settled.
And then they went there to the Bay Area?
Yeah, into Sunnyvale, like, which I guess is, let me try it, like, kind of close to like all those like one floor track homes, basically, where like, you know, like Steve Jobs and Wozniak were like doing their thing.
In the garage.
Literally in their garage of all these now, like, I guess technically historic homes that look just very plain, very bland. And it's almost like suburban brutalism, but not a Sears. So.
Yeah. Okay, so when you came out here, what did you have any kind of goal in mind, like creatively or professionally or socially? Was there a scene you wanted to be a part of or anything like that?
I think I did want to become part of a literary scene in some way, because I wanted to write since 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
Like just doing these like really bad like Clive Barker pastiche like splatterpunk horror stories, and then like eventually like I think it was like Catherine Dunn, the book Geek Love, about like it was like this sort of like, I don't know, like how should I put this, like this goth, Southern Gothic novel about circus performers. Like something about that really appealed to me. So like, yeah, that confluence of like I'm an adolescent reading horror novels, and then like I'm an edgy teenager reading edgy novels. So yeah, that had always been something that interested me. And like in terms of what like a fully formed vision of what scene I wanted to do, or what I wanted to do creatively, I think it was all very nebulous. It was literally just like, I guess I just want to move to New York and see what happens.
So what did you study at SDSU? Were you studying writing, English, English lit?
I double majored in philosophy and English literature. So yeah, like the least employable combination of things you could study. So looking back, thinking about like those little butterfly effect things, like I sometimes wonder what would happen if I did take philosophy seriously and try to teach. Even though I don't know if I have the disposition to like be a teacher, like it would have been interesting to see at what point I would have burned out from adjuncting and then tried something different. So
have you ever considered teaching writing?
There was a time, yeah. There like I think there was a time right around when like that writer's block started to hit in like the later 2010s, like the mid to late 2010s, where it was starting to hit pretty hard. Whereas like, what am I gonna do? Like I'm just doing all these, like I'm hustling for freelance gigs, doing a bunch of like just random writing here and there. Should I go into teaching? What would this be like? I briefly did like 2 guest lectures on film, because I think my a friend of mine was just like, I don't want to teach today. Hey Hubert, you want to do something? So like I wound up doing like this weird lecture about like long takes in film, and like just assembled a bunch of clips, everything from like Orson Welles' Touch of Evil through like Old Boy, and just talked about like what's going on in these shots. It's funny because I think those were just like regular literary, like English composition classes I gave this lecture to. So it was just like, yeah, this is like when your teacher is just not feeling it and puts on like something on the TV.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, right. Let's talk about your fiction.
Yeah.
And you're working on fiction now, right?
Yeah.
After like a hiatus.
Yeah.
After, or like pre-pandemic hiatus, kind of, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
A lot of that hiatus was mostly like false starts on things, or like, yeah, the idea's there, but like, where is this drive? Where is this, like, I guess, sense of endurance to actually see something through? So.
Who are your fiction influences? Can you compare your style to any other authors?
Yeah, I think like when we were in school, like I think my big models like heading into grad school were Italo Calvino, Jim Shepard, and Stephen Milhauser, like, and also Karen Russell too, like sort of like these weird fiction writers. I guess Jim Shepard's not necessarily a weird fiction writer, but like, yeah, like fabulous magical realist, surreal, odd fiction. Like today, it's pretty similar. Like now, it's like Ali Smith, Carmen Maria Machado, who's kind of like a later generation's Karen Russell. I feel like her stuff's incredible. Clarice Lispector, who I think there were like, when we were in school, I felt like that was when she was coming back around again, and like more translations of her work were coming out. So like, yeah. We were there first at the Le Spectre Essence. So, who else I can think of? I mean, oddly enough, like still going back to like Clive Barker, I still think about during the pandemic, I reread one of his like really big books, Magica, and it's just sort of like, yeah, this rules. Like this appeals to the teenager in me, but still does to the adult because, yeah, he just cares about he cares about sentences and weird worlds and like these odd metaphysical ideas. So, yeah, I think those models still kind of hold in an odd way.
So those are the things that you care about too in writing.
Yeah, like I think there's like, I think a lot of writers I really like. It's these odd ideas, that very singular vision. Like Barker did this book called Weave World about like an entire world of people like hiding themselves away from like destruction in a carpet. Like that's, you don't, where is that coming from? Like what set this off? Or like Italo Calvino's Cosmic Comics, that book of short stories about these semi-immortal like beings dealing with space and time paradoxes. Like where is that coming from? Or like another like early book that I got into around high school that's just sort of like, oh, you could do that with fiction, was this like tiny novel called Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman, which is, it's almost like baby's first Italo Calvino, like Invisible Cities, because like the first chapter is about like Albert Einstein like being a patent clerk. The second chapter is about this theory of time where like, you go around and time flows backwards, or you go around and time takes the form of birds that you have to catch, or people are on like train tracks and they're just moving around. Like these really strange, fantastical ideas. Just something about that is just sort of like, I don't know, it makes me think of things in odd ways. So.
Are you sticking with short stories? Okay.
Right now short fiction just kind of feels like what I got my sea legs for.
Yeah.
I remember in grad school I tried to, I guess like a lot of youngish writers do, they try and do that big swing novel where all they do is explain how the world works. I think I got about 150 pages into that and realized like, oh, I actually don't know how the world works, especially through this lens of like I don't know, like art house close-up magic. This is a little too silly. Maybe I'll step back and do something in a more contained, understandable form. So.
But short stories, I think, can be just as difficult as writing a full novel or a novella, I imagine, because you really have to focus on the economy of everything, right? The language, the story, and
exactly.
It can't be easy.
No, and sometimes I thinking about those like abandoned stories from a while ago, I think a lot of them kind of, as I was feeling out the form a little bit more, like outside of school especially, it's like, I think I felt that weird tension about, am I trying to write a short novel or am I trying to write a short story? Like how much should I be giving about these people and about their situation? Where should I dial it back? And like, maybe part of the writer's block was like my inability to make those larger decisions and like be like, well, let's play with this a little bit more. What if we just like shear this down and give myself like you got 30 pages. Well, actually make it 25. How are you going to make this work? And really just write to that length as opposed to just writing indulgently. So, yeah.
Okay, so how long do you think it typically takes you to finish a story? Is there a typical time?
It varies. Like, it can take like, for like short things that like fire off pretty okay, like could be like 2 months, 3 months of like dedicated work. Others are just kind of languishing in that limbo space of like, is this a short story or is this a novelette? Tell me. Like, either way, it's like there are limited places you will ever be able to submit this. Maybe bring that novelette down to a short story size. So,
yeah, limited places you'd be able to submit things. How often do you write something with the submission target in mind? So, like this, did you say it was Frida?
Yeah.
For example, right? Let's say you wanted to, it didn't work out quite this way, but let's say you wanted to write something for them rather than them reaching out to you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, how often does it work out that way that you have, a target in mind?
It hasn't really worked out that way lately. It's mostly been kind of feeling my way through the work rather than writing towards a target.
So a little more for yourself, and then you could maybe find a place to submit it afterwards. It might be a good fit for it.
Exactly. Though I think with Frida, that would have been interesting if it was just like, if I had been told about that, and it was just sort of like, let's see what happens in the slush pile. And like the window there for like short pieces, it was like either poetry, like short pieces, or like recipes. So it's just sort of like, and the window for the short pieces was like 300 words, which was oddly liberating. Being able to be like, let's get this down to the bare essentials, because like you cannot get in that trap of trying to write a novelette. So.
Yeah, 300 words.
300 words. Yeah.
Wow. I'd love to read that.
Yeah, I could send it over.
Yeah.
I think it, as a craft, like this craft essay, I think it works okay. Pizza and writing, they're kind of the same thing, really. So.
Well, I love pizza.
Yeah, there you go.
And writing. Yeah, it's right up my alley. Right in my oven. Okay, let's see. What else can I ask you about here? So one thing, real quick. You mentioned the slush pile. Explain what the slush pile is to anyone who doesn't know.
Sure. So the slush pile is basically unsolicited manuscripts that go into a literary journal or magazine. There's no entry point through an agent or like a connection. It's like just all the way in the slush pile for volunteer readers to kind of cull through and advance on or reject. That could be... Thinking about that, like I used to find like all those rejections demoralizing, but not anymore these days, because it's just sort of like, yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of I'm just playing the lottery at that point. Let's see if the mood of the reader, like if me and a reader connect, like that's going to be so fortunate. Like, but if not, it's like, all right, well, there's so many other places to try and just send your work out. So
yeah. Where were you first published?
Funny, that was a slush pile submission, oddly enough. That was the Normal School, which I believe runs out of Fresno State's MFA. That was like my first two short stories were accepted roughly within the same point after like a year and a half of just constant rejection. So it was like the Normal School and Mud Season Review. So like Normal School, the story called Here Be Dragons, which is like the most Calvino-y story I could write, that very much Calvino'd. Very concise, very, like, I think maybe like 700 words or something. I'd have to look at it again. And then the other story was The Goddamn Caped Canaveral, which was like this sort of like wannabe Evel Knievel trying to jump the Snake River Canyon in a rocket. And much longer... more Jim Shepard-y than Calvino-y, but like, yeah, both of them very much like stories that had been worked through in grad school, like when people would just be like, thinking about that, like I would get feedback in workshops, and like I'd notice like the stories would hit a wall, so that was just like, what's this missing gear that I haven't done yet? Like, what can I do to just like make this a little bit more interesting, a little bit more surprising to myself and to other people? Like, and that was the most important thing I guess I got out of the grad school experience. Just like, all right, well, you've pushed this story to a certain limit. What else haven't you been showing us? Like, let's really take this out and see how fast you can make this go, how surprising this can be, how much you can invert an expectation, or like, I mentioned surprising yourself. I guess like, what can you do to surprise yourself? Yeah. So yeah.
Tell me the feeling. What did it feel like for you to, to be accepted, to be published, to be told, we like it. We're gonna.
That felt really good. Like that felt like, because it's different if in like a workshop setting or like between friends. Like just, I don't know, having a stranger be like, yeah, this ruled, dude. Like, thanks so much. Like, that there's nothing like I don't know, brightening up someone else's day or amusing someone enough to be like, yeah, I want to share this with others. Like, that's.
And pay you something for it.
I mean, these are literary magazines. They don't really pay anything. They pay in contributor copies. So like, Yeah, I mean, even even if there was some pay, like I think the acknowledgement is one of those things.
Yeah.
That because especially as I've gotten older and realized like what I want to do creatively, it's like oh yeah, I would love to do this to make a living. I don't know if that's possible, but what I can do is do this so it feels like I'm not wasting my time just doing things for other people. Like this is for me. Hopefully some other people will respond to it. It comes back to like the reason, like, yeah, the reason I started writing in the first place. Like this feels nice.
Yeah.
This feels expressive. Like it kind of doesn't matter, like these larger metrics of success, because like that's not why I started doing this in the first place, and
Right.
that's not why I'm doing it now. It's like, no, I need this to feel better about myself, even though doing it doesn't make me feel better about myself. So, which I think is a Jim Shepard line. So,
Yeah. So you're feeling good about it now.
yeah, it took a
Yeah.
while to get back to that though. Like it definitely felt like I was like just sort of beating myself about like either not writing enough or not being productive enough. And now it's just sort of like, hey, it's okay. You're doing this because it feels great, right? Okay, good. Like you just had a good day then. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, very few people can make a great living out of it, right?
exactly.
So yeah, loving it is the most important thing, I suppose. Let's see. Do you want to give any advice to any aspiring young writers out there? Do you have a piece of advice that you would give?
I remember a writing teacher at Gotham Writers Workshop, like one of the classes I had, Gordon Haber. I remember he sort of had his own take on like, or no, this wasn't Gotham. This was the continuing education NYU, if I remember right. Like just one of those night classes you could take as a workshop. He had his version of the messy first drafts of Anne Lamott. His advice was like, yeah, don't be afraid to let it suck.
Yeah.
Like this is you're getting this out of your system. The point is to like keep refining it. Because I part of a lot of that like a lot of that long stretch of writer's block was like, man, I'm terrible at this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, beating myself up over like not feeling like I'd done something perfect when that's never the point that
Right.
first time around. So
Yeah, good writing is rewriting, right? Or it requires rewriting, revision, and time,
Exactly.
patience. Yeah, not being embarrassed is really important, right? Not beating yourself up over not writing the perfect sentence or the perfect chapter the first time.
Exactly. Like not being embarrassed is great. Great as well. Like I mean, we were talking about writing embarrassing poetry, but like, there's a bravery in just being like so painfully sincere, where at least you could like look back at that and be like, no, you know what? Hey, good on you. You definitely tried. Like
Yeah.
this is good. But like yeah, not being afraid of like a bad first draft. And not being afraid of being embarrassed, because like I feel like, yeah, I don't know if this applies to everyone, but I feel like maybe people hold back about being too sincere or being too earnest in their writing, or like, I don't know, maybe they've killed too many of their darlings because of bad advice they've gotten in the past. It's just sort of like, no, put it out there, like see what happens, and like let it breathe on the page, let it breathe for a first writer before you figure out what to do with it. So,
Yeah.
Or a first reader, excuse me.
There's nothing more embarrassing than being embarrassed all the time.
Yeah, exactly. That's shriveling up into a ball, basically. So.
Okay, well, I think we could talk for a long time on this podcast, but it does have to end eventually.
Yes.
So we're getting very close to the end now. There's a segment that I do in every podcast. It's called Canadian Trivia. So let me ask you, what do you know about Canada?
The flag has a maple leaf on it. If you're in Quebec, you have a funny accent. I only say that because a French teacher I had in college had a Quebecois accent, and that was the first time I really noticed, like, Oh yeah, no, that's very different than my other French teachers.
Yeah, the Parisians.
Exactly. Yeah, very distinct. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to put your Canadian knowledge to the test.
Okay.
In this segment, Canadian trivia. Okay. Are you ready?
Okay, let's see what happens here.
Canadian trivia. Question 1. Which Canadian city is known as Festival City?
Edmonton.
Correct. 1 for 1. Number 2. What color is the sand on Prince Edward Island?
Red.
That is correct. 2 for 2. Good. Pretty impressive so far. Question 3. How wide is Lake Ontario?
85 kilometers.
Yeah, that's right. And how many miles is that?
52.6.
You were pretty darn close. 52.8, but who's counting?
I did the math wrong in my head.
Number 4. How many time zones are in Canada?
6.
Hubert, this is pretty impressive. Question 5. This one's for all the maple syrup. Let's see if you can do it. What is Canada's national animal?
Oh, the beaver.
5 out of 5. Not bad, my friend.
Yeah, no, apparently I knew more about Canada than, apart from the Quebecois accent, so that's good.
Have you ever seen a Canadian beaver, by the way?
No, I can't say I have. I don't think I've ever seen a beaver in real life, to be quite honest.
Huh, even at a zoo?
Maybe at a zoo. Yeah, maybe at a zoo I have. Yeah. So
usually they're cartoon beavers. I've seen more cartoon beavers than any other kind.
Yeah, the thing I know about beavers is their tail has like cross hatching on it, right? Like in a cartoon. So yeah.
Yeah, and they make dams.
Yeah, that's all they do. Like,
there must be a lot of dams in Canada then.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
Huh.
Especially that being their national animal. I believe all of Quebec City was constructed by beavers. So.
Have you ever been to Canada?
Yeah, I've been to. So I went to Vancouver as a kid, which doesn't count because I was like under 10.
Oh.
But then, so last year I went to Montreal to see The Cure because.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, because if I wanted to stay in the city and see The Cure and get good seats, it would cost like $400, $500. If I wanted to go to Montreal and get good seats for The Cure, it cost me $87.
Oh.
so like, yeah, basically what I paid for like the hostel I was staying in was basically like, okay, yeah, this is great. I'm seeing The Cure. I'm 14 rows away from the stage. Yeah, this is incredible. So
Nice. Did you fly up there?
I took the train.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, which next time I would fly. I went. That was the weekend where like The Cure was playing, but also like there was a big F1 race, so it was a very packed city at that time. So,
how long was the train ride? About
7 or 8 hours.
Hey, that's not bad.
Yeah, I mean that's like if you drove from San Diego to the Bay Area.
Yeah.
At noon. That's how long it would take you. So.
Okay, well, that's the last official part of the podcast. Like I said, I mean, I think we could talk for another hour if I weren't so scatterbrained. But you were doing a tremendous job.
Oh.
And the very last thing, I want to leave this to you to, say whatever you like. You can leave the audience with a message of some sort or whatever you want to say. You can thank me for inviting you to be on the podcast. You can compliment me on the job that I did as the host. Whatever you want to do, it's your time.
On your like touchscreen cash register, can I tip you like 25% also?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, you can go higher if you want.
I mean, this has been exceptional service, so like you might get that 30% that I'll regret maybe later. But like, Jim, thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to tell people for real? That's not about me.
Oh gosh. Yeah, keep trying. I mean, I was watching a movie last night called All of Us Strangers with a friend, and there's a really, really interesting moment towards the end. I kind of don't want to spoil what goes on, but a character tells another character, like, I'm proud of you for surviving. You probably went through a lot of negative things throughout the course of your life, and yeah, I'm proud of you.
That was beautiful.
No, thanks.
I'm proud of you, Hubert.
Oh,
Am I
sure.
allowed to be proud of you?
I'm always for that. We talked about like what it feels like to get like a story accepted, or what it feels
Yeah.
like when you do creative work that people like
Respond to.
Yeah. And it like ultimately that is that feeling. It's like someone saying like, I'm proud of you for making this.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Hubert. You're an amazing guy.
You as well.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Tremendous. All those adjectives.
Says that in my philosophy degree. So
Thanks. Did you have fun?
I had a great time. Yeah, this was awesome.
You were awesome.
Oh.
I've had too much caffeine today. I hope I didn't turn into too much of a moron throughout the podcast.
Not at all. You were perfectly cogent.
Whew.
Yeah.
Okay.